Cadance!
Cadance.
Who is she? Why is she here? She's an alicorn, but how?
If you don't already, Cadance is probably one of the most unintentionally mysterious characters in all of MLP. We know very little about her, but the very little that we do know, she might have one of the most interesting backstories out of any character, alicorn or not. And to be honest, her backstory could be very straightforward and boring, but it's just the fact that we don't know is what makes her so interesting. We don't know much about her other than A, she exists, and B, she's an alicorn. Like, that's not normal. Before we begin, however, I'd like to take a moment to say that this video is going to be very headcanon-y heavy. My last video was very headcanon-y heavy too, but a lot of people didn't realize that, even though I put in big text that it was going to be headcanon-y heavy. I guess I just didn't do a good enough job explaining that, because half my comments are telling me how stupid I was. It's a headcanon, guys. It's okay. Now, without further ado, who the hell is Cadance? My Little Pony first began with 2 alicorn sisters, and originally, this was supposed to be it. Alicorns were never meant to have any backstory behind them, and Celestia and Luna were supposed to be the only alicorn sisters ever. No more, no less, and the show would never explain it. But in Season 2, the script was slightly messed with, when they introduced some pony no other than our sweet little Cadance. Whew, I just got done from running, so I'm a little sweaty right now. I should not be wearing this sweatshirt, excuse me.
Ugh. Yikes.
Cadance, obviously, is the 3rd alicorn, and for whatever reason, she's labeled as Celestia's adopted niece. How do you adopt a niece? What does that mean? Isn't it usually adoption like children? And why did Celestia specifically adopt her? Was it because she was an alicorn? So as you can see, from the first few moments she was even on screen, it raises a lot of questions. It's even more confusing that Cadance was actually Twilight's babysitter. Why the hell is an alicorn princess babysitting some random foal? And at this point in time, it is a random foal. It's not Twilight, Celestia's student yet. It's just some random child. Because Twilight doesn't get her cutie mark until after she becomes Celestia's student. And in the scenes where we see Twilight being babysit by Cadance, she does not have a cutie mark. So there's literally no reason for Cadance to be babysitting this random child with no relation. Unless Celestia was at this point in time already eyeing up Twilight to be an element of harmony, and maybe Cadance was sent to get a read off of Twilight. I don't know. And fun fact, by the way, I don't know where to fit this in the video, so I'll just fit it right here. Cadance was originally envisioned as a Pegasus, but was changed being alicorn, so presumably Hasbro could sell more toys. After these events of Season 2 finale, Cadance and her husband Shining Armor defeat Sombra, and they are elected the Princess and Prince of the Crystal Empire. This will be important in just a moment. From there, Cadance, for a few seasons, just kind of does her normal princess shenanigans. She rules over the Crystal Empire until, like, Season 6, where then she has a filly known as Flurry Heart, a naturally born alicorn. I think Flurry Heart is the single most commented on event in this entire series on my channel. I think I've talked about Flurry Heart's birth more than any other event. I named Flurry Heart's birth in Alicorns Are a Mess, my last video. I solved alicorns in My Little Pony. I named Flurry Heart being weird there. And I think that there was one more video I mentioned her in, but I can't remember it right now. It was one of the really early ones. I could go on and on about how strange Flurry Heart is existing, and I actually did for a minute. I have an entire paragraph here explaining how weird Flurry Heart is, but I'm not gonna do that. I'll save you the trouble. But anyway, after that, she goes back to being her princess duties until pretty much the end of the series. And within G4's FIM, that's all she is. From an outsider looking in, I would not fault people for thinking that Cadance is a very boring princess. And honestly, a lot of the fandom came away with that idea of her, that she's just a boring character. Because on the surface, she is. But no, the comics and the books is where it starts to get freaking wild. Bear with me. So, finally, what about Cadance's backstory? What makes her so damn interesting? Well, there are actually multiple answers to this question. The first answer is probably the most boring one, and it comes from the back of, like, collectible cards, I'm pretty sure. Her birthplace was Canterlot, and she was born and raised there for an entire life. The second backstory is slightly more interesting, but not really still. This backstory also has no source, so I can't confirm the canonicity of this one, but at some point in time, Hasbro somewhere said that Cadance was born and raised in Vancouver. And that's all of the backstory from that side of the... That's all the information there is. But finally, this is the most interesting backstory for Cadance, and the one that I want to focus on today, because it kind of leads back into itself. So bear with me. Her backstory comes from Twilight Sparkle and the Crystal Heart spell. It's just like a single paragraph long, and it's just randomly in there, but it is her backstory. This is the backstory that most people consider, as of right now, canon, because it just has the most information about it. And it's also probably the most interesting backstory. In the chapter book, it's revealed that Cadance doesn't have birth parents. She was found outside of a small village, similar to that of Ponyville, and was taken in by Earth Pony parents. The townsfolk presumably found her on the edge skirts of the city crying, I'd assume. And like I said, presumably adoptive Earth Pony parents stepped up to take care of her. Years later, when Cadance was a little older, she fought a love-stealing witch known as Prisma. There's 2 eyes in there, Prisma. She defeated Prisma and then reformed her. Then, Cadance was engulfed in a strange magical aura and taken to a strange place where she met Celestia. And I'm like 99% sure this strange place is the same place that we see Twilight sparkle in the season 3 finale. And although the book doesn't state it, it does say that Celestia discovered Cadance in that place. And that when Celestia discovered her, her fate was sealed. What the hell does that mean? That sounds almost ominous, if anything. I think it means that Celestia was not prepared for Cadance to show up in, like, the sparkly world, right? And was genuinely quite surprised to find Cadance there. Then, with Celestia presumably present, Cadance ascended from Pegasus to an Alicorn. Celestia then, still probably blindsided by this revelation, decides to take on Cadance officially as her niece. As now, she's the only other Alicorn who's even existed for the past 900 years besides herself. So this backstory kind of implies that Celestia really has no control whether someone ascends or not, and Celestia merely just sets up Twilight to ascend in the show. Like, sets up dominoes to fall into place, right? But now another question about Cadance is raised. What the hell do they mean as found as a baby? She was found, like on the floor? She was found, like, on the floor or something? What does that mean? Now, this is MLP we're talking about, so it's not like some evil people just dropped her on the forest floor expecting her to get, like, eaten by the wolves or something, right? There's a very specific reason for why they say that she was found, and specifically as a baby. So it's not like she was separated from her parents, right? And just got lost. So that is officially all of the official lore behind Cadance. That's all that we really know about her, and it's not a lot. And now, we're entering into the headcanon zone. Buckle in. Now, let me be perfectly crystal clear. This is headcanon/theory. Don't take what I say as fact. Not only that, but this theory isn't mine. I just think it's such a freaking rock solid theory that I want to share it. I just like this theory headcanon thing so much that I'm willing to defend it. This theory/headcanon was made by somebody known as Quantum Apologist. I am simply regurgitating this information to you. I did not make this. This person did. They're a lot smarter than I am, so please go check them out. If I remember it, I'll also link them in the description, but I'm bad at memory, so I probably won't. So, we have all of these discombobulated bits about Cadance, but we don't know anything about her. How do we connect them all together to kind of fit into one coherent story? One word. Princess Amore. That was 2 words. Princess Amore was, I think, the first and last ruler of the Crystal Empire before King Sombra showed up to ruin everybody's day. She was a unicorn that apparently bore a striking resemblance to Cadance. Princess Amore died to Sombra. In the comics. This is comic, by the way. We're in comic territory now. Princess Amore died to Sombra, but wait, this is MLP we're talking about. They surely wouldn't kill a character outright, right? You are right in thinking that, but instead they decided to give her a fate worse than death. Sombra, in a fit of rage, turned her into crystals and then spread her crystals across Equestria. It's like spreading her body parts across Equestria. A fate worse than death. How do they do this? Well, we don't really want to kill anybody, but we're also going to give them eternal torment for all of eternity. What? How does that make sense? Sombra, however, also said that she could be reformed if crystals were brought back together. So in a way, she didn't really die. Do you see where I'm going with this? It is entirely 100% possible that Cadance, the second ruler of the Empire, is actually a reincarnation of the first ruler of the Empire. Perhaps one day Amore's shards were partially reassembled, and it created Cadance. Because they were partially assembled and not fully assembled, Amore didn't return. Cadance began. This would make sense as why she was, like, found in the woods with no parents. Because she literally spawned in. And maybe, contrary to popular belief, Celestia isn't stupid. And when Cadance appeared in the sparkly world, Celestia simply made the connection very quickly that Cadance and Amore are kind of the same person, right? And that might be why Celestia adopted Cadance as her niece. Because she knew Cadance in the past life, and she knew Cadance would eventually probably become the ruler of the returned Crystal Empire. Just me saying that makes her sound a lot smarter than she is in the series. So this entire thing kind of sounds like just such a well-written story that I can't help but think that it is canon. Or that at least should be. I could see it genuinely happening, and it's kind of a shame that Cadance herself wasn't really explored more in the series. Like I said, most people think of her as a really boring character. It's also a shame that this backstory might be rewritten.
Despite being in the middle of G5, or I mean the end of G5 going into G6, recently a new comic was announced called The Rise of Cadance. It was a comic that's returning to G4, which is, again, really weird as G4 should have been buried, but, you know, Hasbro wants to make money somehow, am I right? So with the release of this new comic, it's entirely possible that Cadance's backstory will be rewritten. So if you're watching this after the comic is released, I'm sorry I got everything wrong. I just really hope with this new comic coming out, they will stick to the original story, or at least the story I presented, because the story that I presented is really, really interesting. It has a lot of potential to be something even greater. One video I was thinking about doing for actually, I think probably a few months now is how would you restart G4? And one of my proposed ideas is a prequel focusing on Cadance, because once again, we know nothing about her. But with this new comic coming out, I mean, whatever. But like I said, it's entirely possible that everything is being rewritten right now, so that sucks.